This was originally meant to be a quick look at Harvestella, one of Square Enix's new budget titles, which looks like they just threw some money into a third-party developer and probably steered them into the preferable direction. Might be a wild speculation, but from the entire look of it, plus again with the damn crystals, it's either Square trying to be more of the developer than the publisher, or just the developers just wanking them really hard because of who's footing the bill. If you're not aware, Livewire is mostly a porting company focusing on shoot-em-ups, from Mushi-Hime-sama to Radiant Silvergun, with their only original work being Ender Lilies. I played that one back when it was released, and it was a decent 2D action game. The idea of playing a fragile girl that has her actions bound to strong spirits is pretty cool. While completely different games, they both share the main plot concept of a worldwide disease. In Harvestella it's called Quietus, a term that is also used for the subtitle of Ender Lilies, in which their story calls it the Blight. If my research hasn't failed me, they were both written by different people, so I guess I'll point it out as a curious coincidence. Unfortunately, everything else in Harvestella is severely lacking. The farming system has barely any complexity, the combat never evolves past its mobile game quality, and the story is just the usual JRPG funfare. I never consider that to be a bad point by itself, but here all the individual components are too rough for any single one to be worthy of the highlight. The protagonist is stuck between being a custom play creation and trying to become its own defined character, but never evolving to either of them. The customization options are extremely limited to the point where the game already has a name for the protagonist that you can accept, but at the same time it doesn't have any real presence in the story, just relegated as a vessel for the player to interact with the other dozen important characters. The art style and character designs also don't break away from the modern Square Enix aesthetic. You know the one. That mix of modern sensibilities to fantasy fashion that I could never pinpoint the exact game or artist that started it. I am aware that some people are put off by the lack of voice acting, but I usually never put much value to that part in games. Even then, if they used the budget from that to have a better polished game, that would have been great. But the problem is that, as of now, the game is in a really rough state. The controls, from the character creation to the UI, all feel really cheap. The graphics are solely held together by artistic direction, which do contain some charming landscapes. But the polish is once again lacking, which I believe is caused by the team's lack of experience with the 3D environments and the choice of hardware. Yes, it has a PC version, but as the weaker system, of course it was developed with a Nintendo Switch in mind. Do listen to the soundtrack though. It was composed by Go Shina, mostly known for the God Eater and Codevein soundtracks. You can talk all the shit you want of those games, God knows I can do it too. But that man knows how to compose a damn good main theme. Regrettably, after just a handful of hours, I couldn't see it getting any better, so I just dropped it. I believe it lost focus on what was trying to be, which led to spreading its systems too thin. And it's not like they're trying to do something completely new here, as Rune Factory is exactly the same genre blend, so they should have just used that as a starting blueprint to build upon. I could just straight up be completely wrong, and the game somehow turns amazing by the end, but consider the following. Just look at how many different rugs there are in this house. Why is there so much variety to this one particular thing? It looks like something an intern did as his first job and ended up going overboard with it. If that isn't a good example for the lack of focus on their priorities, then I don't know what it could be. Again, if you want to play a better version of this fusion of genres, go play one of the Rune Factories. I still haven't played the most recent one, but it's probably better than what Harvestella tried to be. As it still was the harvesting season, I was craving for a cozy farming game. And with the indie developers picking up the genre and keeping it alive with their own spin, that couldn't be a better time for choice. But for comfort, there is no shame in going back to the good times of old. Harvest Moon is a prolific series with close to 30 years of main games and spin-offs, some of which by this point might be more popular than the series it originated from. Because of some licensing shenanigans, the series is now called Story of Seasons, which led to some branching off and games being now created with both names. Unfortunately, both cities stagnated to a point that they look like cheap knockoffs of their past selves, only exacerbated by the fact that indie games easily exceed them in quantity and quality. Even if most of them are like that because of the early access and forever updating development cycles that games now have. All of this to say that when people see a farming game nowadays, it's always defined as a Stardew Valley clone. No one even knows what Harvest Moon is anymore, and for good reason. If you want a decent 3D farming simulator, just get something like My Time at Sandrock or Coral Island. I hear that one is coming up pretty nicely. Oh, and Sakuna, do support that game if you can. The developer team did a great job and definitely deserves all the support it can. Anyway, there are a lot of ways I could go on with this, but here is how it's going to be. The original Harvest Moon, while pretty good, has the same problem that I have with Stardew Valley, which is the camera being aligned vertically, so everything looks way too flat. After that, they developed two sequels, both in '99, Harvest Moon 64 for the Nintendo 64, and Harvest Moon Back to Nature for the original PlayStation. While releasing in the same year, they are significantly different games, and in the end, different experiences. Think of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, where the setting is pretty similar and the characters look the same, but they have completely different backgrounds. For example, in Harvest Moon 64, Best Girl Karen is a tsundere that lives in a vineyard, while in Back to Nature she is a pretty chill gal that lives in a town's convenience store. Having played both several times in the past, I could never decide which one is better, so for this I'll be playing the first in-game year of both, comprised of 4 seasons, each with 30 days, which mostly shows what the majority of the game has to offer. I usually do a bit of researching even if I'm knowledgeable about the topic in question, but none of that today. I don't see Harvest Moon as a thing to complete, but something to relax in. Being aware of the most optimized crop layout, knowing how stamina can be manipulated, or looking up the location and prerequisites for every event just ruined the game, so I'm just going to go with the knowledge that I managed to remember from previous playthroughs. It's been a long time since my last visit, so take a loud sip and wrap yourself in a blanket. It's time to get comfy. Going in order, I will start with the one that released first, Harvest Moon 64. Like its predecessor, even before the title screen presents itself, you are treated with a backstory that led the protagonist to his new life in the countryside. His grandfather has recently passed away, leaving his farm behind and the village folk devastated with the loss. Feeling responsible, the protagonist decides to take on the task of restoring the farm, as you are thrown into a pleasant, grassy field, revealing the title. You get the option to see a tutorial on how to play, but no need for that. I will relearn things as I go. After providing some info, like your birthday and the name of your farm, you start exactly as in any other day. The protagonist eats 3 jelly donuts in a single bite, wrapper included, and then you're free to do as you please. As your first day in town, the mayor offers to show you around, which is great in comparison to the first game, where it forced you to talk to everyone in the village before letting you continue the game. If you already know the ropes, you can just politely decline and get to work right away. But not before you are introduced to one of the most important characters, solely known as the buyer. Shady as that is the one that swings by in the afternoon to pay you for all the good stuff you put in the shipping crate. He is pretty cool like that. The true Harvest Moon begins here. You don't have much more than $300 to your name and a big chaotic plot of land, so it's time to make some decisions. Taking a more relaxed approach, I decide to go around and talk to people, but without even noticing the night had arrived in a flash. Even then, I decided to take a stroll into the mountains, where I found a kind man that gave me a fishing rod. While fishing is quite simple, something about the timing makes it completely impossible to me. That, or I'm just getting too old and my reaction times are not as good as they used to be. Every time I wanted to catch a fish, I would have to exploit the system of throwing the lure and let it go right after, which might let me catch something if I'm lucky enough. For this, I have to give Harvest Moon 64 one of the lowest scores in the list of fishing minigames, as it defeats the true purpose of relaxing amidst the nature. Next day, I finally focus on the main objective. But first, gotta play with the dog. Gotta do my dog dailies, he deserves it. Okay, for real now, time to do some farming. So cleaning the fields is the first priority, starting with a small patch near the shipping crate for an easier harvest. On my way to buy some seeds, I took a detour into a nearby ranch for a quick visit, where I got roped into taking care of a pony by a cute girl. She doesn't even introduce herself, and she's already asking what I'll name it, so I just spurt the first name that comes to my mind: Julio. After a relaxing day, I'm finally investing on my future. As I don't have that much money, I decided on a bag of turnip seeds, which the lady informed me were the ones that grew the fastest. She is kind enough to answer any of your questions about farming, so if you don't know something, you can always ask her. Just outside the store, you can meet the lady's daughter, Popuri, and one of the 5 bachelorettes available in the village. If you want to have any lasting chance with any of them, you better be ready to go out of your way to talk to them and offer them ridiculous amounts of gifts. It might seem easy, but each girl has a different schedule like everyone else in the village, and trying to find where they are hanging out is sometimes harder than anything else in the game. I usually always go for Karen, the girl with a difficult family relation who lives in the vineyard, but this time I decided to also interact more with Popuri, to see where that leads me. Next day, dog and horse dailies. You will also need them if he is to grow strong. Oh, right, you can spin the camera around in this game, but only in your farm. Everywhere else you are forced to the same perspective. I always forget about it because I much prefer the default camera setting. The next few days I spend my free time in the mountains to gather some wild berries and plants to sell for extra cash, while further interacting with the villagers to learn about the place. Can't fail to mention the bomber cats, which always cracks me up. And then find out that my grandfather is buried in the same cemetery as the animals, which in retrospective is kinda fucked up, but maybe he wanted it that way. I also stumbled into Karen throwing a fit for some reason. It took me a while, but it was only during this awkward moment that I noticed the little chick on top of the A button to advance the text. It's those charming little details that are missing from the future titles in the series. Anyway, after a few days the turnips are ready for harvest, so the money situation is certainly getting better. At the same time, you can participate in your first festival, where the year's chosen king goes up in a hot air balloon with someone of their choosing, and then everyone else releases balloons to wish for a good year of harvest. After you join the event, you're automatically sent to bed the moment you leave, so I better make sure that all the daily tasks are in order. Later on, this becomes a bit of a problem, because if a festival and a harvest day coincide, you gotta act fast to do all your work and still be able to attend the event. Next day, the rain started pouring, but I still expanded my crops by planting some potatoes, and began considering a grass field for future livestock. Cleared out more of the field, set up a neat fence, gathered some wild berries, interacted with the villagers. All was going pretty great. After a few days, this dude strolls right into my farm, proclaiming how he is a botanist and that he's the actual owner of the flower shop. Gotta keep my eye on him, cause if I want to get to that sweet pink blossom, he will probably have a word or two to say about that. The horse race event happens, and it's right when my cabbages are ready to harvest, so gotta juggle that to be able to attend the event on time. Even then, I don't have that much budget for betting on races, so I just enjoy the horses going at it. The following day, I find a hungry man at my doorstep, but when I rush to grab some berries from the forest, he disappears. Kinda rude, but whatever. As the end of the season approaches, I decide to work on my grass field and add some supplementary potatoes, as I don't want to plant something that doesn't grow fast enough and that will wither as soon as the season changes. During a rainy day, I visited the mysterious cave in the mountains, home to a bunch of out-of-season Christmas elves, which they either didn't know how to speak or were just fucking with me. Also, during one of my breaks, I decided to go cast my vote for who is going to be this Miss Flower Goddess Lady thing, but I would quickly realize how corrupt the democratic system is as soon as I lay my eyes on this year's winner. While attending the flower festival, I got the opportunity to buy some rare flower seeds to give my field some color, and at the same time, this smooth criminal dude tried to sell me a power nut, saying that if I eat it, I'll gain more power, so, of course, I took the offer. The silver lining on the worst girl winning is that you get to choose one of the other 4 as a dance partner, so everything is good in the end. Not only that, the next day I get some more great news. Julio is finally a man and can now be used as a portal to the shipping crate. No, seriously, that's how it works. You can also ride it, but unfortunately only inside the farm. No going into Walmart with this one. The next few days I plant some more grass, with the flower seeds right next to it, harvest the last crops for the season, and visit the carpenters to check out the prices on the house expansions that you can get. Yep, it's not cheap, and you also have to supply the wood they use, so it's doubly unfair. Even then, I start saving for the most important objective of the list, the greenhouse, which is a great opportunity to explain how time doesn't move forward when you're inside buildings. The greenhouse not only lets you plant all the crops from all of the seasons, but time is frozen, so when you unlock it, you basically won the game, as you are left with tons of money from the best crops of all year, and all the time in the world after you are done with your daily tasks. I guess I also forgot to explain that the more you use your tools, the further they advance. For example, the watering can. It starts only being able to water 1 tile of crops, to 3 tiles, to the ultimate 9 tiles. It takes a minute to get there, but once you have it, watering our crops is really fast. For that, I believe that the pacing of the game is pretty good. You start having to do a lot of work, but it eases in as you play. It's one of those rare instances where the game becoming easier is a good design, as it rewards you for the effort you put at the beginning, leaving you with the extra time by the end. So, as spring is ending and there is no more time to plant the season's crops, I decide to buy my first chicken. It might give my wallet a bump, but it's an alright investment, as you can just incubate the eggs to make more chickens, so you really only have to buy 1 chicken to get more. Finally, summer is here. The busiest season of them all. Corn takes the longest to grow, but you can harvest it multiple times from the same crop until the end of the season, so I go all in and buy a bunch of seeds for that. After a good day of work, I decide to watch the fireworks at the beach, ending up meeting Karen by chance. After enjoying that brief respite of joy near the all-encompassing darkness of the ocean, I reflect over the human nature and how one can never truly break away from their vices, as I observe Karen walking further into the distance. Summer goes by really quick as I put some real hard work on the farm and catch myself spending more time with Karen whenever I can. I try my hand at fishing for 1 catch or 2 to sell for a pretty penny, and also put down some tomato seeds to really go all out for this season. During all of that, 3 more chickens are born, which I take the chance to pay tribute to best chicken in video games. Cookie. Catching me completely off guard in one hot summer day, Potpourri visits me in my farm to offer me some delicious iced tea, filling me with both a delightful sense of refreshment and regret as I swallow the sweet nectar of betrayal. If Karen was to catch even a glimpse of this moment of affection, I am sure that the restoration of the farm's former glory would be the least of my concerns. Even then, work continues, the vegetable festival comes and goes, Karen reveals that her golden locks of hair come from her grandma, how the fuck does that even work? And the corn and tomatoes are finally ready for the first harvest, which give me the first big payout of the season. During one of my free afternoons, I mistakenly throw a fish back that I caught in the pond, only for a water imp to give me a blue fruit to eat. You don't even have a choice. The character just straight up hits it, safety be damned. Later I repeat the same action, but with a bigger fish, and he comes back, offering me something closer to what that one guy sold me back then, which leaves me wondering if they're both in some sort of pyramid scheme thing. Summer continues, the Firefly Festival happens, big money keeps rolling in, to the point I decide to buy my first cow. 1 more animal to pet and feed at the end of the day, as cows take a long time to grow before they start giving milk, plus the cost of extra tools leaves the entire endeavor to be pretty expensive. The Sea Festival also happens during this season, where all the town boys gather up to compete in a race, which I barely managed to win, and that rewards me with one of those cute pig incense burner things and a photo to commemorate the event. I also visited the couple that lives in the top of the mountain. You can't actually go there by normal means, as the bridge is broken until later, but you can climb the tree behind the carpenter's house to get there sooner. And just like that, summer is over and fall arrives, destroying all of my previous crops, leaving me to cut them all down by myself. Not as bad as winter, but fall is really slow on the harvest part, as the only thing you can plant are eggplants, so the forest scavenging will be the main source of income while the few crops grow. Rick has a big carpet you can buy for your house, but I'm still trying to save for the greenhouse before the winter, so that it will have to be for later. Once again, even though I'm playing risky, Potpourri comes with tea and biscuits, so you can both spare a moment to praise the queen. Even after that tender moment, I feel a pit in my stomach as I collect the season's berries, which I will later use to woo Karen. Not satisfied with the progress with either of the ladies, I look at my dog with disgust for myself, as I consider the path I will eventually fall back into. The cow festival happens in the only village of the world where everyone is not lactose intolerant or just really courageous, as all the villagers partake in drinking gallons of milk to decide which cow is the best. Later, I remember that the tiny pond in the forest can be interacted with if you throw a vegetable into it. Some hot gull appears from beneath the water, offering you a choice between 3 options, which in reality is just one.
I need more power.
After another power nut, it's back to work until the Harvest Festival. But the day before, Karen visits with a gift, turning out to be a literal sour grapes. Even as I grow older, but farther from wiser, I'm still familiar with women's mind games, as I eat them and wonder how much does she know of this 3-pointed geometric shape she is secretly a part of. The day of the Harvest Festival arrives, and the next year's king is decided by who wins with the best dish. Which is not me, cause I couldn't cook even if my life depended on it. You think I eat jelly donuts every day because I like them? Cause I don't. Harvest after harvest, I slowly raise the funds for the greenhouse, until repeated monotony has fallen me back into old habits, as I pull the old dog trick on Karen. As time is frozen inside the bar, you can just keep showing her your dog, and after just 4 minutes, I trigger her Stockholm Syndrome so that she now loves me unconditionally. This triggers a memory the next time I go to bed, where I remember something that happened in my childhood with a certain girl. Coincidentally, Karen swings by to bring me some wine while I was working, but it's fine, apparently it's energy, whatever the hell that means. This leads to a couple of days later, she's showing me around the place where her family makes the wine, with the problem being the door getting mysteriously stuck when you try to get out, just like in a dream. After calling me a cool cucumber, we get out through the secret hole in the corner, and she remembers that we are actually childhood friends. As if that wasn't enough emotion for the rest of the season, the egg hunting festival happens, and I absolutely crush the competition, which grants me another power nut. And by this point, I'm starting to think this whole village is a pyramid scheme on power nuts. Unfortunately, when I finally gather enough money for the greenhouse, the chief carpenter asks me for some help rebuilding the bridge, which leaves them unavailable to work on my project. This extends for 5 days, ending up with some extra pocket money, and it doesn't end the day automatically, so you are free to work on your affairs before or after helping. Later into the season, I was forced into horse racing with Julio, which he wasn't even close to being prepared and only led to disappointment. It's alright, he tried his best. Right before the season ends, the owner of the Green Ranch asks me to keep some cows safe for a few days, introducing me to their owner the next day. Of course, she is the cutest MILF and I can't date her, only reinforcing the cold in my heart that the winter brought in. Snow covers the entire village in a white blanket, so no harvesting for now, as the carpenters finish up my greenhouse. Meanwhile, I break the rock in the pond that is now frozen and discover another goddamn power nut. The days go on so slow that during the wait I finally buy the rug for the house, which really fits well with the room. Finally, after a few days, the glass money making machine is ready, and I planted a bunch of corn and strawberries to celebrate. The glass part is important to mention, because days later an earthquake happens and the end of fate decides to destroy my beautiful crop composition at random. In the meantime, I returned the MILF's cows without even one sex act as a reward, such was my luck, and my heart was so broken that I looked once again for shelter in a certain pink blossom. With money no longer an issue, I commissioned work to start on my house and finally had a kitchen. During a short period of winter, the mines are open for anyone who wants to go there and dig up for some rare stuff, which I do now that I have so much free time during the day. At the same time, the carpenters finish my kitchen, Thanksgiving rolls in, but instead of turkey with the family, girls give you cake. Wait a minute. The earthquake that I mentioned before gives the carpenters the idea of creating a hot spring, and they are once again asking for my help. Same deal as the last time, 5 days of work and then it's done, ready for when anyone needs to relax and restore some energy. Even though I'm the one working in the middle of the winter with only a shirt and overalls, both Popuri and Karen get sick, which their mothers are keen to let me pay a visit, and the only time you can actually see the inside of their rooms. It is a shame, because they are all greatly designed, with cute details that really reinforce each of the girls' personalities. The money from the corn starts rolling in, so I commission even more work to be done around the house, as I am left with not much more to do but to water my gold mine of corn. Eventually, the dog races happen, but even though I gave Bao Bao all the love and attention in the world, he still came dead last. Thanks a lot, Papa. Though I might have lost the love of my dog, at least my work has finally paid off in other venues. For the Star Night Festival, Popuri tells me with glee that she'll be waiting for me at our special place to watch the shooting stars. And in the top of the mountain, cuddled together, any sense of doubt I had in my mind was long gone, as now I knew the true route I should take. Some days later, as the year ends, Popuri takes me to the top of the mountain to see the first sunrise of the year, as we marvel at what the new year will bring us. And as soon as the first day arrives, another memory of my childhood invades my dreams, as I remember a girl falling off a cliff as she tries to pick some flowers. And without even time to eat my donuts, I rush to the exact place that I knew something was about to happen. Before any tragedy could happen, I climb the tree as fast as I can, but then I slip, but then I climb up faster, but then I slip again. But it's fine, because I get there in time to pull her to safety. Without even hesitating, I run to the tool shop to buy the most important purchase in my life, as I rush right back off to meet Popuri once again, where she usually is. Where she always was, all this time, waiting for me. After all of that, what does Back to Nature has to offer? Well, besides the terrible title screen, when asking for your birthday, you can choose the specific day, unlike the previous game, where it was always the 25th of the season. I guess that was the easier way to make sure it wouldn't cross over any other event. The beginning also has a better backstory presentation, where you reminisce back to one childhood summer vacation in your grandfather's farm, presented with a quick montage of several heartwarming scenes. You also get introduced right away to your childhood friend, with both of you sharing a certain song in innocence. Interrupting the moment, the mayor just straight up warns you that you gotta prove yourself to be capable of restoring the farm to its former glory, or the village will kick you out. Kinda harsh, but okay. With the setting established, there are a lot of noticeable changes from its predecessor, besides the graphical refinements, so let me give you a quick overview. Instead of being able to walk in all directions, you are now locked into a grid with more a restraining control scheme. If you ever played a game like this, you know what I'm talking about. If not, imagine what pressing down would do in a game that always has the camera locked at an angle. Does the character go left down or right down? That is something of a preference that differs from person to person, so at least you can choose between various options. You can now quickly switch between tools and items in your bag, which is just amazing. There's no longer the need to pause every time you want to change the tools or deposit a bunch of crops in your shipping crate. The trade-off is that you only start with 2 inventory spaces for each, and you have to buy a bigger bag if you want more. That is kinda fucked up, but not as much as how tool leveling works now. Instead of automatically upgrading, now you have to use them and then take them to the blacksmith, which not only needs the corresponding ore for each upgrade tier, but also pay him an absurd amount of money and wait 3 whole days. Yeah, you can just upgrade the tool directly to the last level if you have the money and the ore, but now if you don't level up the hammer and the axe at least once, you can't break the big pieces. Just like that, you'll have your field covered in those until you buy at least the first upgrade. I appreciate the attempt, but it could have been better designed, especially when there are now 4 different upgrade tiers and the upgrading prices are always the same regardless of the tool's current tier. After playing so much of the previous one and growing accustomed to its characters, it's really weird to see them all misplaced. At the same time, you'll quickly realize how much more involved they are in the story, with cutscene events happening much more frequently, especially with the girls. Some of them even require the player's input, which will affect your relation with them. There are still 5 girls available, but they are now aggressively paired with other bachelors, to the point where you are guaranteed to cockblock someone during your stay in Mineral Town. And no, you still can't go for the hot MILF in your area. The English translation could use a rework, as there are some weird sentences here and there, but in the end, I believe that it adds to the charm of the game. It's not like everyone always expresses their thoughts in beautifully eloquent sentences, so these small mistakes give it a slight human touch. While the graphics and music enhancements are great, especially when paired with all of the quality of life improvements, there are still some baffling decisions mixed together. One that kept bothering me is how slow the text scrolls, especially when you're buying something. You'll notice this more often when you're buying seeds, because for some reason the dude feels the need to explain how they work every time you interact with them. Also, because of the CD format, the loading between some of the screens tends to be a bit too long, with a slight hiccup of the game freezing while loading the bell announcing the hours, always scaring me that the game could have crashed. The clock, always present in the main screen, also helps with keeping track of the time, which is a must when you consider how huge the main field is in comparison to the previous games. In the extreme case of trying to use the entire thing, it's still perfectly doable because you can ask for help from the elves, from taking care of your crops to your livestock. Fishing is more lenient, but still far from comfy activity status, especially when you can now catch garbage, which is only there to waste more of your time. Instead of hunting for wild items from the forest, now the main method to get some extra cash is to go into the mine, which is now open during every season. It's still the same system as before, but when analyzing the flow of the game in general, I find it a bit more tedious. In theory, you can gather more items to sell each day, but you will want the best ore you can get, and that can all be found on lower floors. So you just waste a lot of time traversing the place. This paired up with the fact that you can only start with 2 inventory spaces means that the early game has a lot of tedious back and forth. What helps in that endeavor are the hot springs, which are now available from the start and can double your work by letting you rest for a brief moment before going back in. So, how was my stay during this playthrough? Well, it was mostly the same flow, so I'll try to keep it brief. For spring, I cleared out the fields and planted a bunch of potatoes, went into the mines, interacted and familiarized myself with the villagers, got rejected by every single girl when offered to be the dance partner for the goddess festival, got a horse, saw Karen go behind the church with Rick for some praying and later saw them arguing because his sister likes a dude with attitude, got a chicken, passed out, planted some cucumbers and turnips, upgraded my axe to copper, got a stroke of luck at the horse races and bought a bracelet the size of my head, which I proceeded to sell for a solid buck, visited the cooking festival, chopped a lot of wood, relaxed in the hot springs, and finally, when the season was ending and the last of cucumbers were ready to harvest, I upgraded my watering can to the max level, as I knew summer was going to be pretty hard. Summer wasn't even here yet, and out comes this smug son of a bitch taking his hot shit. I don't let it bother me, cause as soon as the season rolls in, I show him who's boss in the swimming race. Well, after a reload, cause the controls were different from 64, where you just mash. However, that impressed Popuri so much that she gave me an egg to take care of, bless her soul. Kai, on the other hand, didn't learn his lesson, the smug motherfucker, going to people's houses to start shit. Nevertheless, I buy a bunch of corn, tomato and onion seeds, as I plan to make the big bucks. A little girl goes missing, but I don't care, I got money to make, old man. In the meantime, I also offer a gift to Popuri on her birthday. Something that was totally planned. I also keep bumping into Anne, who even though she is not a horse girl anymore, she is still the worst one. Anyway, I try to give the mountains one more chance, as they're usually empty and not worth the time. But the lack of oxygen hits me so hard that the tree talks to me and gives me a power net after I decide not to cut it down. God damn it, even the trees are in on it now. We then have the little cockfighting festival, which I regrettably lose, but not without the knowledge that next year I will absolutely demolish everyone with my monster cock. Some days later, the tomato festival is on, and after joining forces with Popuri, our team wins flawlessly. As the corn and tomatoes start getting ready for the harvest, the money starts flowing in, and I decide to buy a bigger hen house, even if I don't intend to buy more than 4 chickens. Unfortunately, instead of being able to choose what part of your farm you want to upgrade, it's in a linear fashion, with the greenhouse being the last upgrade, so it's time to add chopping wood to the daily tasks, as it's going to take a lot to get there. Summer crawls along, with farm work being so intense that sometimes it rolls into the late hours of the night, with the struggle to court girls at the same time not helping the fact. After all that work, soon comes the fireworks festival, which I once again take as an opportunity to interact with Popuri. The season is almost over, but there was still time for a storm to ruin some of my crops, leading me to go talk to the goddess of the village to ask her why she wasn't doing her job properly. And she basically bribed me with another part on it, because of course I should have expected that. In the meantime, the hen house expansion gets completed, but it's not like I'm going to buy more chickens, so whatever. The moment the season ends, this motherfucker just appears inside my house and says that he's going to train making tools in my farm. Kinda pushing the boundaries, but it's not all bad news, as Kai fucks off with the promises of coming back. Never mind that, as fall is here and I got a bunch of money from the previous season, so I go all in, not only the eggplants, but also the carrots and sweet potatoes. I also buy the bin to help me with the harvests, as you can just plop it down anywhere and use it to carry a bunch of crops at the same time. Even after buying all those seeds, I also contract the carpenter for home expansion, which after that bountiful summer barely put a dent on my savings. The village also has a small musical gathering where the priest asked me to play the ocarina, but as soon as I feel the inner machinations of the universe reversing the flow of time, I decided to call it a night. Toolboy also weeded out my field, and I mean the entire damn thing. It's not like I was planning on using all of it, but thanks I guess. Farm work continues, and I've been chopping so much wood that I can finally upgrade my axe to the last tier, offering me a break from deforesting the entire village. Toolboy shows me the progress of his work, only to go so comically bad that he goes through an entire character arc in the same day until he finally concedes on his own flaws. Next day, I wake up and the entire house is renovated. I don't know how he did this entire thing while I was sleeping, but that's pretty impressive. Unlike the previous game, the kitchen is built upon the same room, with a bed going into the far corner of the house, giving it this weird yet charming look. You can now cook meals, which is an entire system that I barely explored, as you have to gather items, recipes and even utensils, and by the time I tried to mess with it, it was too late to get deep into it. I also bought a ball from the Chinese dude to play with my dog, but not even a minute in, it fell into the transporting bin, and I guess it got teleported into another dimension, as I could not take it out from there. Funny, and yet tragic. Later, the Harvest Festival happens, and the mayor asks me to bring something to throw into the big pot, but I just say that I forgot and still get to eat for free. The season was going so good that I decided to plant some grass for the true farm aesthetic, as this time I wasn't interested in raising more livestock apart from the chickens. A few days later, during the titular harvesting moon, I shared a tender moment with Popuri up in the mountains, as the ethereal landscape made us forget about our surroundings, even if for only a bit. In the next morning, a man asks for my help to harvest some grapes, but I totally forget, amidst all the sweet potatoes and eggplants that I have to harvest. Money is rolling in so fast that I just have to buy anything that I put my eyes on, starting with the barn expansion, even though I'm not planning on buying a single cow. When the everyday monotony started eating the strongest, I finally decided to recruit the help of the village elves, which I still think it's fucked up that they live behind the Christian church, and the priest is perfectly fine with it. Not wanting to step out of my boundaries, I just ask one of them to help with taking care of the chickens, as the wood chopping gets even more intense. The buyer becomes my dealer as I get ready to go over the moon with his little bag of harvest. By this point, I have so much money that I just start committing terrible choices, as I buy the rest of the wood for the next upgrade, which is the last house expansion. And again, right when the season changes, I just wake up in an entirely new house, with even more refined furniture and with an actual separate bedroom. A shame you can't customize it, but still, a pretty cozy setup. Winter covers the entire village in white, as all the previous crops disappear completely, as unfortunately, I couldn't build the greenhouse in time despite all of my efforts. So the season goes by really slow, with only the chickens as the main source of income. But because the lake in the mountains is frozen, you can access the secret cave in the middle, which gives you a new mine that lets you dig up the best ores right away, plus extra ones like orichalcum, used to make gifts for the girls, and adamantite for the mayo maker. Yes, of course, the common choice between crafting high-level armor or a machine to spawn an average condiment. If you dig deep enough, there's a secret cave that you can visit that doesn't have anything. I will assume that you can catch some type of fish in here, but the only thing I got from there are fish bones. Days go on by slowly as I just spend my days feeding chickens and hanging around the village, while still chopping all the wood in my way. I offer a pair of unique earrings made out of a rare metal to Popuri, but she quickly dismisses it like it was nothing. No hurt feelings or anything, but damn bitch. In the topic of bitches, the dog races happen, and my ass of a dog performed so bad that I basically had to drag his ass to the finish line. Can't be helped, I guess. In an actual sweet moment, Potpourri invites me to have dinner with our family during the non-religious related event that happens by the end of the season. As the end of the year approaches, I contemplate over the right moment to take the next step, as my days are running out, so I go out to find Potpourri in the same place she always is during the morning. Struck with both a sense of fear and confidence, I reveal the plume gift in hopes of my feelings getting reciprocated. But alas, such was the blindness to the truth that I didn't even register at first that she absolutely rejected me with complete force of intent. An entire year of moments that most people don't even get to experience in their entire lifetimes. And yet, I really felt like this was the right thing to do. To be together, like we were already before, perhaps in a dream. While too late for it to be of use, the greenhouse is finally completed some days before the end of the year, revealing that on contrary to Harvest Moon 64, the space is really limited. It is still good, and it does look better aesthetically, but still, it's not as busted as the original. Celebrations and festivities happen back to back as I lose myself during the passing days, reminded of how I'm still a stranger amidst these people, leading me to watch the first sunrise alone in the crowd. The first day of the new year is not much different. Not even wanting to see Potpourri's face, I spent my afternoon drinking with the old folks, trying to make some sort of connections. And this would be the last of it, ending this recorded journey in such a miserable note. Was it not for the fact that I never told you how during all of this time, Potpourri wasn't the girl I spent the most time with? That while Potpourri was too busy trying to fuck her way out of the town and away from her responsibility of a sick mother, Ellie was always there. Not just for me, but also for her grandmother. Every single day when she wasn't working at the clinic. Just a completely devoted and fated to be wife, to the point that she even started bringing me lunch at the middle of the year. As the proposal happened near the festivities of the year's end, the marriage only happened a few days later, but for her, the wait was worth it. And Potpourri, what the fuck did she do after all this time, besides complaining and giving me a single egg? Bitch, I already had a chicken by that point, go shove it up your ass. Bet she couldn't even be bothered to do that. Probably would have to ask Rick to do it for her. You know what? Yeah, I guess Potpourri can go fuck herself. This has been long enough, so here are my final thoughts. Harvestella is painfully average, Harvest Moon 64 is pretty good but simple, and Harvest Moon Back to Nature is also great, but with some questionable design choices. They will later re-release that one for the PSP and include the alternative version of the game where you can play as a girl. I would recommend that one as it seems the better package, especially with the shorter loading times, but the aspect ratio feels wrong. Like they just threw the game into this system and didn't bother to change how stretched the game looks. Anyway, that's it. Whatever game you decide to play, just remember to relax and have fun.